3 snaps, that's all we need. Hello, guys. My name is Tian, and this is the second pre-intro induction episode 2. And since last episode, I noticed that there were a couple of things that I want to improve on. One is the way that I talk, because it sounded like I was like falling asleep in the previous one. And second, I wanted to have a little bit of background that way kind of looks more appealing to for those who are actually listening or watching at the same time. And wow, that was a big breath into the microphone. And I think like me doing this is kind of like documenting the entire process before the actual introduction begins, and kind of like a documenting my journey before the intro, so pre-intros, and I'll do this to a point where I feel like the product is at a point where I really like it to be the product. So I guess you can call this the prototypes. And it will, by doing so, I feel like it's a good way to document, to prove a point that you can do anything by just keep doing it. And I know that for a fact, but it's kind of like a statement that we all say. Um, and it's, like a lot of times I feel like a little bit off topic, but a lot of times I feel like what we see online is the end product. Like a song, we see the success, whatever you might define that by, but we see the achieve or the product, the end product a lot of the times, but we don't see what happened before it. So this is my kind of statement or to document what happens before the introduction and what goes before that. Um, with that being said, welcome everyone to episode 2, pre-intro. Why is that so hard to say? Welcome to episode pre-introduction number 2. And in today's podcast, we'll be talking about fitting in and what it means to fit in. And first, before we talk about fitting in, let's define what fitting in means in my way. Well, actually, I'm pour some tea, and it will define what fitting in means. Because tea is awesome. By the way, I found a trick that if you're making tea, like in a tea bag, instead of pouring the tea bag into a cup, I feel like you're losing a lot of value by doing that, because the water will steep the tea inside a cup, but the water's not hot enough, so a lot of the tea is not extracted enough from the bags. And I feel like there's a lot more to be done to the tea bags, opposed to having it contained in like a hydro flask. That way the tea is like locked in here and it's still steeping while you're drinking it. So the last cup of tea is actually the best cup of tea. So just a little bit of a quick side hack to the podcast, but let's dive right into fitting in. Like, I feel like just a little backtrack about how I've been going through fitting in. In middle school, I I never felt like I fitted in somewhere. I was always the weird kid that nobody liked. The weird kid that was just there, like I was just like a tree. The wind just blows through the air, and I'm just kind of shaking my head. And they know I'm there. They know I'm the palm tree down the street on Fifth Street, But I was never acknowledged. I was never like, wow, look at that tree. Um, I was just the tree. I was never the tree. So I was the kid that had red hair. I dyed my hair red. God, why did I do that? But I guess I did things to get attention. I don't know. I don't know the reason, but I had red hair. But I did a lot of things to fit in. My friends played soccer. I didn't like soccer at the time. Not that I still do, but like I didn't like soccer. That was just like what they did, so I did it. Um, and that went for a long time. And they were like, my friends were picking teams, you know, like the first one that races down to the goal. They're like the first leader and the second leader, and I was never the first because I was always the slowest. Um, and I was also the one that got picked last, which kind of sucked. But true to life, I wasn't that good, and most of the time, I guess my friends they wanted to pick the best ones to win. Um, so I guess like I was never a part of anything through middle school, and even in high school, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I had two different clubs where I tried to fit in. First one is Key Club. A lot of people were in Key Club, so I wanted to fit into Key Club because it looked fun and a lot of people were there. But that ended up not being the case because Key Club is a place for people that are very energetic and I guess uplifting. Or it could be the opposite, but I just didn't feel that environment was for me. It was just too much. And social, I guess, interaction is not my thing either. Now that I've grown and I start to realize my kind of environment, but so that wasn't for me. I went to the second club called the Korean Club. That one was not for me either. The only reason why I was invited to Korean Club was because I looked Korean and they needed someone or they need more Korean people into the club, which is really weird. But um, I didn't like it. The club was just fangirls of K-pop singers and culture. I was not a part of that. I just looked Korean and they wanted me in it, but I wasn't part of it. So fitting in has not been my expertise. Like I can blend in, but I don't fit in anywhere. The only place I feel like I belong to is actually with video games. I belong in a place where uh, it's kind of weird to say it now, but uh, like a game is like in a different world, like an imaginary world. I feel like that's where I belong. In the real world, I don't entirely feel like I fit in anywhere that well or belong just yet. So far, I don't have a place where I feel like it belongs to me. Um, but I think it's interesting topic to kind of um, like the sense that we always have to fit in somewhere. I think that's kind of interesting that the feeling of just fitting in. I don't think that makes any sense. And the way that I see it is kind of like a puzzle piece, puzzle, puzzle, puzzle piece, where my piece belongs to a like a lion. Like you're doing 1,000 pieces puzzle to a lion. Not even 1,000. That's way too many. That's like Facebook things, Facebook friends. But real life puzzle, maybe like 4 pieces, right? Um, I'm like the corner piece of a lion, and I'm trying to fit into another 1,000 piece of Paris, right? Maybe my piece fits, but it doesn't belong there. Like I could fit into the puzzle piece, maybe somehow you squeeze it in, maybe it doesn't fit entirely perfect. But at some point, people are gonna be looking at the Paris, the Eiffel Tower, and say, I don't think that piece belongs there. You know, so I think it's just interesting that we just have need the sense of fitting in. And I think a better word to say that is that belonging is a better place to go for it. Where do you belong? And my sense of belonging has, I guess, I'm still in the search for that. Um, but I know that we all belong somewhere. Um, and I think, or to kind of like put into a different way of looking at this, like, can you imagine like fitting in? Like, let's imagine that I play Fortnite, right? And I go up to the leader of the Yakuza and say, "Play Fortnite with me." And that's me, like I'm not the one playing Fortnite. Like I'm the guy going up to Yakuza and say, "Play Fortnite with me." Like I'm in the wrong place. That is not the place for me. I do not belong there. I belong behind a screen, not outside of it. So I think that's the way I like to look at it. it's just kind of interesting to always feel this feeling of fitting in, and I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I feel like the best way to feel about it is that you have to just belong somewhere, a place where it feels like home, a place where it feels like this is where I was meant to be. This is a place where I feel like I can be myself and I don't have to hide. I don't have to put on a mask. I don't have to be a certain way to be accepted. And an example of this is at my workplace. I have a couple of coworkers. They are always teaming up with each other. They mess around, they have fun. It looks like they have fun. Um, and that was joke around. And it looks like a place where I kind of want to be, right? I try to kind of, like they mess around. I kind of add in a line here and there and kind of joke with them, but it always end up backfiring me. Like they always team up with each other, three against one. I always end up losing, and they always end up supporting each other, patting each other on the back, and hugging each other. So it's always a lose for me. So I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna try to fit into here because I do not want to be a part of a group that gossip, talks bad about other people, and so I just stay quiet in my place. A lot of times when I hang out with them, because it's my coworkers, um, I'm just by myself, and I'm fine with that. And I guess this is kind of like where we go into. Before we go into the second portion, is that the phrase where or the quote saying that you are who you choose to be, and I think that's really powerful because being the person that you want to be is always an option. I mean, in my case, there's certain character that inspire me to be a certain way, and there's bits and pieces of them that I like to inherit. And I think the beauty of that is that with the last podcast I was talking about is the voices. Sometimes, like when the voices talk a certain way that is not me, I know who I want to be, and I know what kind of person that I am. Therefore, when the voices comes on and act a different way, I just acknowledge the voice and I just move on because that's not me. So I think that the idea of choosing who you want to be and belonging to a certain place is it's a really important thing. I feel like I mean being lonely is one thing, but being by yourself is also important. And this is where I'm gonna go into where I feel like throughout life I'm starting to understand myself more when it comes to uh, picking up pieces here and there and start to get an understanding of who you are as a person. And essentially, the way that I like to look at it, it's kind of like you collect pieces and you build a mirror. And once you build a mirror, you can kind of see the reflection of yourself. But before the mirror, what you do is you go out and you're like a dog. Not that you are a dog, metaphorically speaking, you're a dog, but you don't know that because you can't see yourself. And you go out and you see a pack of lion. You're like, wow, those guys look powerful. I want to be like that. So you go up to them. The best thing might not happen. I don't think dogs should be around lions. But that's kind of like what it is. If I went up to the Yakuza and said, hey, you want to play Fortnite? That's like me approaching a lion. Like I'm a dog and I approach the lion. And eventually, through trial and error over time, it's going to get to a point where I'm like, okay, I don't belong there. Let's not go and mess with the lions. Let's try the zebras. And essentially, it's going to get to a point where we can kind of understand where we belong. And I feel like that's kind of where the journey is at right now. Like, where do you belong? Um, Let me see. So, a little bit backtracking. On the last episode, I was kind of like free, I guess what you call it. What's the word? Where you just rap without thinking? Like, free. What do you call that? Free rap? No. You don't call free rap? What the hell is that? Um, what is that? Free something? Freestyle. So last episode, I was freestyling, but this one, I decided to make a note or an outline of what I want to say. That way, it's kind of like in a format. But let's see. Moving on to the next point. All right. So I'm gonna get to the last point. Is that I no longer feel like I need to fit in somewhere. Belonging, not just yet, because I know it will come. One day, like people that do the things that they like to do, and eventually they're gonna find a spot where they just belong in a certain place. Whether there's other people or just with you, either one, we belong. We all belong somewhere. So being content with not fitting in has helped me tremendously. I feel like I don't have to try as much when I go out. Let's say like when I'm working with my coworker, like I don't have to try to be a certain way. I hate putting on this mask and try to be different. And I feel like it's beautiful that you can just be content and be okay with just being you and not having to try to fit in somewhere. Because in the first place, why fit in a place where you don't belong? So if I was a dog, why trying to fit in with the lions? Like that doesn't make any sense. So I think it's just beautiful that like not fitting in is a good thing because that means you can just fit in another place that where you belong. I kind of say like back and forth, but the point is that we don't always have to feel like we need to be a certain way. Be the person that you want to be is essentially the message, and don't fit into a place where you don't fit in, but rather belong to a place where you belong, um, and be the person who you want to be. And I think that wraps up the second episode of, or the second pre-introduction to pre-introduction to the introduction. That wraps up the second episode of pre-introduction. Talking a little bit about fitting in. All right, let's take a cup of tea. Take a cup of tea. Take a cup of drink a cup of tea, and end it with a sip. Classic Coca-Cola commercial.